Hello and welcome to another Hun's History Nest podcast, where history is enjoyed and salvaged forever. This podcast is How to Outline. It's for Mr. Hunwick's grade 8 U.S. history classes. A couple of things here before we get started. Every student's going to need as seen here, a composition book. A writing utensil of sorts, whether a blue pen, black pen, or pencil, your unit packet, and as seen here, an iPad or computer to pull up the online textbook. I'd like to guide you through how to access your online textbook. Go to any search engine like Google and type in the Grosse Pointe Public Schools, and in doing so, you will come to this website, and once going to this website, you go to the drop-down menu here where it says select a school, go to Parcells Middle School, and up will come the Parcells Middle School webpage. Then go over to staff websites and click on that, and then located down here at the bottom is Roger Hunwick, that would be me, Mr. Hunwick's class webpage, and click on that, and up will come this website. On this web page, you'll notice here there's an area to access the book. You click on this class zone. You'll notice that the username is Social Studies 8 and the password is Parcells. Notice that social and studies is not spaced and that it's capitalized and there's a dash between the 8. So you go to class zone, we click on that. Up will come this. Click on return to class zone if you're already signed in. You're going to then go to middle school, social studies, click in Michigan, or you can click it here, find your book. You'll then come to this page, and our book is American History Beginnings to 1914, and we click on that. This will come up, and down in the lower left here where it says online book, we're going to click on that, and up will come the book. A few things here with navigating on this book. Please notice there's an arrow here to go previous, an arrow here to go to next page, or you can just click on the page area, and for all intents and purposes we're going to start with chapter 2, and that's on page 24. We type that in, hit enter, and up will come chapter 2. Every student in Mr. Hunwick's class receives a handout titled the U.S. History Text Outlining Instructions. This is the basis for which we will explain on how to outline. This is also accessible on the web page. If we were to go back to the Hunwick class web page and go over to the index over here on the left, you'll notice it says class policies, procedures, and forms. And if we click on that, this will take us to this page, and over on the right where it says links, we can go down to outlining procedures and click on that, and we go to this very handout that will be utilized. The first thing that I want to go over in explaining how to outline are some of the terms that will be utilized throughout our instruction time period. I'd like you to begin here with the Roman numerals. Roman numerals are going to be utilized for each chapter title, and the Roman numerals, as seen on this example on a clock, begin here with 1, go clockwise 2, 3, all the way to 4, then 5. 5 is a V, and 6 is a V1. Notice 4 is 1V. When the number is in front of it, we subtract from it, giving us 4, and then we add when it's behind, giving us 6, all the way through here to 10, which is an X, up to 12. So we begin with Roman numerals. Then the second number, and I'll explain the indentation as we progress, is a big A, and it is directly followed by a big B, which is down here. Our second number is a big 1. Then we have a little a, then we have a little 1, and to separate it from the big 1, we put it in parentheses. We then have a little a in parentheses, which makes it a super little a, or in this case, a and b, super little a and b. Please note, whenever we use these items, they line up directly below each other. Roman numerals are directly below Roman numerals. Big A's, or big letters, directly below big letters. Big numbers below big numbers, little letters below little letters, little numbers below little numbers, and super little letters under super little letters. These terms will be utilized throughout, so it will be important for us to understand that. We're going to begin our outlining by opening up to the first page that is lined in our composition book. And in doing so, we are going to write the chapter title, which is Chapter 2. It's European Explorations of the Americas. We're going to write this on the top of the very first blue line as seen here, and it will go here in our composition book. Seen here is an example of a composition book page. As I noted, Chapter 2, European Exploration of the Americas, 1492 to 1650. And we're going to place the page number here. This red line seen here, this is called the indentation line. And this is where we place the page number. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now after completing that, we're now going to turn the page and we're going to go to the first section. Now we'll notice here, the first couple pages here are things that we do not outline. They do not contain anything that will be of use for that. And then we get to Section 1, Spain, Claims, and Empire. Now the section titles are Roman numerals. And as seen here, since this is Section 1, it will be Roman numeral 1. There's no indentation. This goes directly next to the indent line. We write Roman numeral 1, Spain, Claims, and Empire. Every textbook has its subtleties or differences. This textbook has an introduction in every one of these sections. This section introduction is one European story. Now just to make things a little bit easier to see, I'm going to fast forward here to page 35 and you'll see that the same intro exists for Section 2, one European story. My reason for telling you this is that we do not need to outline the introduction. It will be repeated as we go through the book. So the first section that we will actually outline is going to be Exploring the Americas. This will be the first part of Section 1. Now if we go back to our sample of our composition book page, we'll notice that we're going to actually indent, and we're going to indent from what I called the indentation line. Okay, this is our indentation line, and we're going to indent here. Now in terms of indenting, it's important for us to perhaps use a tool that we all have. I suggest you use your thumbnail. Indent every time the width of your thumbnail. So we'll put our thumb here and we will put a big A because that's the next item underneath the Roman numeral. Indent one thumbnail, put big A, Exploring the Americas. Now, having done so, we now are going to go to the next portion. So we go back to our textbook and Exploring the Americas, this is big A. The next part here, and you'll notice it's in red, it's bold, it stands out, is this item Shortcuts to Asia. This is going to be indented under Exploring the Americas. So we'll go back to our composition book and we'll notice here that we are going to indent another thumbnail from Exploring the Americas. So we'll put our thumb back here and we're going to go with Big 1. Big 1 becomes Shortcuts to Asia. And so we have our systematic indentation here, Shortcuts to Asia. All of these have been provided to us thus far. We now go back to our textbook, and this is where we're going to have to begin reading. Now, it's not necessary to read every single word, but typically the first couple sentences of each portion of these items. So we're going to read the first few. Sailors seeking a route to Asia depended on the skill of their navigator. A navigator plans the course of a ship by using maps and nautical instruments to find its position. From here, we would probably gather that navigator is the main theme of the first couple sentences. So we go back to our composition book. we are now going to use our thumb again, and we're going to indent from the big one. We're going to indent a thumbnail. We're going to put little a, and the main word that we got from our two sentences was navigators. Now, under navigators, we learned a few things in our first two sentences. So we're going to indent again, and now we're going to put a 1, but we're going to make it a super little one. A little one. And we learned that they planned routes of ships and that they used nautical instruments. These two things reflect on what navigators do. So we put little 1, little 2 in parentheses, and these both provide us information for the navigators. Now, that completes page 27 of our work. So we have to think, well, what is next? We've finished page 27, and now we ask ourselves the question, what is next? The next thing that we will do is we're going to go to the next page, and we'll notice that we have a subtitle, Henry the Navigator. Here we go, turning to the next page, to page 28. And we'll notice that we have Henry the Navigator here at the top. We're going to read all of this. Now, from this first part, Henry the Navigator will stand out as being relatively the focal point, the main idea, the subject of this remaining portion of this part. Now, because we have read and determined that Henry the Navigator is our subject, but we're on a new page, we need to then write page 28 here, but notice it goes on the other side of the indentation line. The only thing that ever goes over here are the page numbers. So we have page 28, and we've determined that Henry the Navigator is the next major subject under our big one, Shortcuts to Asia. So we keep our little a, we're making Henry the Navigator little b, and we place it directly under the little a. So little b becomes Henry the Navigator. Now, at this time, it's important for us to pause, and I want you to understand something here. Your little a, your little b can be different from student to student. The only thing that is the same, exact, between student to student is going to be what is the Roman numeral? We're all going to have the same thing. What is our big A? We're all going to have the same thing. What is our big 1? We're all going to have the same thing. Any big number, letter, or Roman numeral will be identical, student to student. Each of us, though, here's our individuality. We will all have different little a's and little b's, depending on what we think, what we determine to be the subjects of these subsections. Okay, we're back to our textbook. We're on page 28. We've determined Henry the Navigator is probably our next subject of this paragraph. So we read this paragraph. Henry the Navigator began a school of navigation. He paid for sailing expeditions to explore the Atlantic and the west coast of Africa, so on and so on. We then go on to read, under the sponsorship of Henry the Navigator, the Portuguese developed an improved ship called the Caravel. The Caravel had triangular sails as well as square sails. Square sails carried the ship forward when the wind was at its back. Triangular sails allowed the Caravel to sail into the wind. The Caravel was better than other European ships of the time at sailing into the wind. We then go to the next paragraph. In January 1488, Bartholomew Diaz, a Portuguese explorer, reached the southern tip of Africa. After sailing around it, he returned to Portugal at the urging of his crew. Diaz is said to have named the Cape of Good Hope because he hoped he had found a route to Asia. So we've read that over. Now we're going to go back to our outlining. Again, I want to reinforce, whatever you're putting here can be different student to student. Any little a or little b, little 1s, little 2s, or even your super little a's and b's, as we'll see, they can all be different. This is where your individuality comes in. So me, what I am gathering from what I read in terms of what is next, I wrote Henry the Navigator. Now I want to expand upon, or I wrote the textbook page there because I'm on a new page. I want to expand upon Henry the Navigator. So I'm going to write here as my little 1 underneath B, this describes Henry the Navigator, that he created the navigation school. So I determined that. I also determined that Henry the Navigator paid for expeditions. So these are two things that I think are vital about him. I also, from my reading, I've determined his ships explored the coast of Africa. This was something else I gathered about him. I have a fourth thing. Notice all of these are lining up because they all are about Henry the Navigator, that he started the Age of Discovery. Now, I also decided, well, that caravel, there was a lot about it, and I wanted to make sure that I wrote that down, that he created the caravel. It's a ship. It's a ship. Now, I want to maybe learn a little bit more about this caravel because there's a lot of information there. So now I'm getting into the super little a. Notice it's a little a with the parentheses, and I'm indenting it. This is giving ownership to the caravel. This, everything below it goes with caravel. It's indented. I'm using my thumb again. The caravel, well, it's a ship with triangular sails. I also determined that it's better to go into the wind. And now I got to that next paragraph. And notice I'm putting a little c because this is all about Henry the Navigator. This, the little a, super little b is all about the caravel. But now I'm back to what is part of Shortcuts to Asia. Well, Bartholomew Diaz was the next item. If we go back to our textbook page, we'll notice Bartholomew Diaz is here. This is kind of like the third paragraph. These two paragraphs were about Henry the Navigator, and now this is about Bartholomew Diaz. So I'm making him my little c. Now I'm going to begin putting little 1s, little 2s, little 3s for whatever, how many ever I think are important about Bartholomew Diaz. The next thing that I thought was important, and notice it's lining up with the little b above it. I'm going to now put that he was a Portuguese explorer, okay? Now, I'm also writing that in January 1488, he discovered the southern tip of Africa and he named it the Cape of Good Hope. Please notice, I don't go back to the indent line. I keep this even with each other here. Okay, it's very important that you do this. We never go back to the indent line unless we're at a Roman numeral. Okay, so this is a very important point to keep an understanding of when we outline. Okay, we have completed this portion, and now we're back to this red, bold portion here, a water route to Asia. Now, if we think, what could this be? What would this be in our outline? And if we go back and we remember on page 27 that Shortcuts to Asia is the same exact size, and it's the same boldness of it. Well, here in our example from the very beginning, we see where our water route to Asia is. It is a big one. And remember, all of us will have the same Roman numerals. We will all have the same big letters, and we'll all have the same big numbers. So this is a big number, water route to Asia, because it's under this section A, so it lines up. We will write water route to Asia, and then we continue how we did the first portion. Okay, now here we are back to textbook page 28, a water route to Asia. You'll notice from your reading here, 10 years later, another Portuguese explorer, Vasco da Gama, followed Diaz's route around the Cape. There becomes our main subject here. We make him then the next item under a water route to Asia. And here we see little a. I've determined my little a to be Vasco da Gama. Then I'm going to write some of the things about him as my little numbers underneath him, that he was a Portuguese explorer. He found an all water route to Asia. And then you'll notice here the big 3 is going to be given to me, and it's going to be Christopher Columbus. And we'll go back to the textbook to see this. And you'll notice here that Christopher Columbus becomes our given item because he is in bold red, just like a water route to Asia was. And thus, the outlining continues. Now, it's important to realize outlining, when you first begin, is time-consuming. It's difficult. You're learning something new. It's much like reading. You will become a better reader only by reading more, and then you become a faster reader because you are reading more. Same concept with outlining. So don't get frustrated. Take your time. This will become a second nature type activity for you by the time you have spent a few of these assignments, and by the end of the year you will consider this to be quite an easy task. Good luck. I hope this helps, and enjoy outlining.